Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Star Connection podcast. I'm your host this evening. My name is Guy Lacroix, coming to you live from the Ottawa-Gatineau region, our nation's capital. That is, if you're in Canada. Anyway, spring is trying to come around slowly but surely. We've had, it's been very rainy, misty, dreary. But, you know, they say April showers will bring May flowers, so we're hopeful. So tonight I wanted to talk to you about the body of work of primarily Zecharia Sitchin on the Annunaki, the 12th planet, and possibly the origins of our human species, our Homo sapienness. So Zecharia Sitchin is actually a Russian-born, but he was raised in Palestine, and that's where he learned Hebrew and a lot of the Old Testament stuff. And he's actually not an archaeologist or classically trained. He's a journalist and an editor. That's why he wrote so many books, and he's good with writing. But he learned I basically believe he was self-taught the Sumerian tablets. He learned to read the cuneiform pictograms, and based on his knowledge of the Hebrew language and the Old Testament, he was able to bring a holistic picture to what he was decoding, because a lot of this stuff is you can decode some words, but if you don't have any context to put them in, then it's a lot of it is having the context around it. So I believe that's his strength, and that's why it's such an important body of work. I first got interested in over 15 years ago, almost 20 years ago, reading the Zecharia Sitchin work, and it's a series of 7 or 8 books, and I've got most of them here. I'm actually missing the first one. Book 1 was the 12th planet, but a lot of it today will be in from this one. And it's not an easy read. It's small print, full of references. Anyway, so there's that, and yeah. So that's, and then I supplemented my my knowledge from those books, and also right now there's a lot of good information on a lot of YouTube channels, the Y-Files, the Gnostic Eye, etc. So it's been very useful for that. So starting off, okay. So basically the main story of the Annunaki. So the story goes that there's a 12th planet in our solar system, and this planet has a large elliptical trajectory, and it only comes within sight of our solar system every 3,600 years or so. and when it does come in, it can come through it can come on the inner planets, like on the inside of Mars, or on the exterior. And as we'll talk about it later, but when it does come in the inner planets, it has a most potentially disruptive influence on the Earth because of the gravitational force and the effects on the water and the tides and all that. Anyway, so we'll describe that in a little bit. Just trying to get my notes here. Bear with me for a second. I'm trying to. What's going on here? Okay. So the way Zechariah he extracted this information by reading the tablets, and little by little he pieced a story together, a mythology, a series of events, so that the main story is that this planet, the 12th planet, is called also known as Nibiru, and the inhabitants of that planet are called the Annunaki, and they're the elder, the chief of the planet, or the main god on that planet, is called Anu. So they are the sons of Anu, or the tribe of Anu. So the Anunnaki. So the story goes that at one point in their history, the Anunnaki on their planets suffered severe climate changes, catastrophic events, volcanoes that filled up their atmosphere, and high winds and everything, to the point where they had no more sun coming in. They had no more atmosphere, like protecting them from the rays of the electromagnetic rays from the outer space. And so basically they needed, after a while they figured out what they needed was to put gold dust into their atmosphere. If they could inject enough gold particles, it would suspend and give them that shield, and then contain the gases and recreate basically their atmosphere. So in layman's terms, that's my interpretation. So they scoured the whole solar system, or possibly other solar systems, and until they found that the Earth met, this planet Earth, not too far from them, met these conditions. It had a large stock of gold in the Earth, in its crust. So they made eventually they made a plan to come and explore the Earth. I imagine this was also during a time when their planet was relatively close to Earth in its large elliptical trajectory. So the story goes that about 450,000 years ago, so 450,000 years BC, is when a crew from the Anunnaki would have come down to Earth. So apparently 600 Anunnaki, and among them about 300 what they called Igigis. So the Igigi were kind of a worker race used by the Anunnaki. So the idea was that they would be mining the gold, and then they would ship out the gold back to the mother planet Nibiru. So 450,000 years ago, they started the gold mining process, and in Africa, South Africa. So they settled their that was their main mining area, and they also set up kind of a spaceport. Their main spaceport to land and leave the Earth was in the Sinai Peninsula, which was Mesopotamia, which is now parts of Iraq, Syria, a couple other Middle Eastern planets, between the Tigris and Euphrates River. That was the central area. Two key Anunnaki to retain. Ani had two sons, stepsons. So Enki and Enlil. Enki was in charge of the mining operations in Africa. Enlil was more of the, I think he was the older brother, so he was in charge of the spaceport and more of a general military type of outlook, whereas Enki was a more more scientific in his exploration than interested in the biology and the geography and geology of the planet, etc., stuff like that. So here they are, 450,000 years ago. They start mining. Whenever they have enough gold, they send the ships back to Nibiru. They even set up a remote waypoint on Mars, the planet Mars, and so that becomes like a space port between our planet and Nibiru. So they basically mine this gold for about 150,000 years till about 300,000 years BC without too many problems. But then after about 150,000 years in 300,000 BC, the workers, the Igigi, which were the worker race that was doing the mining, and they start rebelling. They're tired of it's hard work. It's dangerous work probably. They're tired of doing the work, and they rebel, and it's a rebellion. So apparently the Igigi, I thought the Igigi at first were the Anunnaki, but a different like caste or. But I know it turns out, well, one interpretation on the Y files is that the Igigi would probably have been another alien race that the Anunnaki had conquered a long time ago. So they probably looked more ET-ish than the Anunnaki. So the Anunnaki are said to have been like 12 to 14 feet tall, just not complete giants, but just larger than the Homo sapiens. And they also had a longevity. They seemed immortal because 1 year on their planet was 3,600 years on Earth. So obviously to us they seemed to us here on Earth they would appear immortal. So the Gigi rebelled, and there were some battles back and forth, and they even at one point I think they attacked the spaceport, and but eventually it was settled, and I think they formed they consulted amongst each other, the Anunnaki, and they had to come up with a solution. And at that time, Enki came up with the solution that he said, well, look, he had noticed that there was like a primal ape man that was roaming already in the area on Earth, Homo erectus, and he said, well, I think we can do something here with we can do some sort of a hybrid. So he started experimenting with combining Anunnaki with the Homo erectus, and gene splicing, and they created a hybrid. So that happened. So in 300,000 BC, so the story goes, they would have created the first, what they call Adamu, the first Adam, a hybrid human Anunnaki from a combination of Anunnaki and Homo erectus genes. And so this was a hybrid worker human, but sterile. They did not have the ability to reproduce. The intelligence was limited. They were just good at working and taking orders. So that was at 300,000 BC. But let's put this in context a little bit. So if we look at primates on the Earth before that, so there have been ape-like primates on the Earth for at least 14 million years, according to anthropology, and most recently, like from 3 to 2 million years ago, was the Australopithecus afarensis, or the Lucy ape man. And then another million years after that, 2 to 1.4 million, evolved what we call Homo habilis. He a handyman. He had the ability to use some tools. And finally, another million years later, the Homo erectus is found. Now, there's a lot of sub-branches along the way, and a lot of dead ends in the genealogy. So I'm just focusing on the main ones that actually culminated to our species. So the point here is that natural evolution takes time, right? Like we're talking millions of years from one species to the other. Then all of a sudden, Anunnaki step in, they make the genetic modification, and that's why the Homo sapiens all of a sudden appear out of nowhere 300,000 years ago. And then so the Adamu, that worked for a while, but then after a while for some reason it wasn't good enough. So now it's not clear, but around 200 to maybe another 100,000 years after that, they kept tuning and improving the human worker, the Adamu, And this time they came up with a version around 100,000 BC. They came up with a version of the what we call the modern human. So he was called the Adapa. Let me see my notes here. Okay, yeah. So sorry, yeah, it was more 300,000 BC. They create the first Adamu, a sterile human worker. Then later, at 50,000 years later, Enki and his stepsister Ninhursag, they performed further genetic procedures, and this time to give humans the ability to procreate. So apparently what made the difference this time is there was we know now that there was around that time, 200,000 BC, scientists today have discovered that we have a gene, we have a chromosome number 2, I think, that's been modified. It's been split and joined with another one. So we're the only primates that have 23 pairs of chromosomes. All the other ones have 24. For a total of 48, we have 46. So for some reason, one of our chromosomes was merged, and I'm thinking it was merged with the Annunaki gene or chromosome, and giving it the ability to procreate and maybe a little extra. So the first civilized man that came out of that. Oh, and the other difference that the gestation was not in a test tube. The egg was in the womb of the chief scientist, Enki's sister Ninhursag. So she carried the fetus right to maturity in her belly and gave birth, and then it was, the beginning of our human lineage. So there's a lot of right away you can see a lot of biblical context or similarities, right? So it's no secret the Adapa was what we call the Adam and the Eve of the Bible. Makes sense. So around that time, the spaceport where Enlil was busy working and coordinating and managing the whole operation, was called Eden, but Edin. So, and at that point, the human species had been allowed to. That's where they had been, conceived and created and all that. And they'd been allowed to roam the garden in the area. But when they see Enki and his sister created the Adapa and gave them the right to reproduce, it was all done behind Enlil's back, their brother's back. So when he found out, he was furious because he thought things would get out of hand and whatever, and he didn't agree that we should give that species more intelligence and procreation, etc. I mean, I can understand his concerns. So basically, we were kicked out of that garden, that Eden. So that's another biblical similarity. So another interesting fact is that first human civilized man, Adapa, Anu, their father, Enki and Enlil's father, Anu, back on the home planet Nibiru, he wanted to meet the new Adapa, a human civilized man. So he was curious to see. So they brought him. So Adapa was flown by spaceship back to their mother planet, and he spent some time with Anu and the Council of the Elders and all that. But Enlil had told Adapa before leaving, whatever you do, don't eat the bread and water of life that they offer you. It's poison for you. So sure enough, when Anu was meeting his grandson and was very fond of him, and they were touring and talking, at one point he offered him the bread and the water, and Adapa remembered Enlil's warnings, not to eat and he politely refused, and and then eventually he came back to Earth. But apparently, later on we find out that if Adapa had taken the bread and the water, he would have inherited immortality from what the Anunnaki had. So it's kind of a fun. We we just missed it by a hair. Anyway, so that's how 23 pairs. Okay, so following along the line, so we can see there's a bit of throughout this story. I've always been fascinated how it ties in with what we've known of the Old Testament and Genesis and the Bible, and to me it's always been fascinating, to see the similarities, and now the way I see the Bible as a subset of the bigger story. Behind the Bible is the actual, the engineering of our species by this ancient astronauts from another planet. It just, all the stories and the myths in the Bible can be explained easily by the Sumerian and the stories about the Anunnaki, and even more detail. So we can see quickly a bit of the genealogy, the lineage. So Adapa then becomes the first patriarch of humanity, the biblical Adam, and then there's large gaps too. Like this is 250,000 BC. So what happened? Because the next timeline we have in the Zecharia Sitchin's teachings is at 60,000 BC. We also have Enoch, the biblical Enoch, is said to be around, and he's also taken to heaven to learn the secrets. So he's probably taken back to the planet as well. At 49,000 BC, we have Noah being born. Also, Noah has up to 3 names. Noah is a Hebrew name. He's also known as Zayuzudra as a Sumerian name, and what's the other name? Niptapishtim. Utnapishtim. That's his Assyrian or Akkadian name, Babylonian name. But I put together a bit of, let's see here. Okay, a timeline. So we have the first atom created 250,000 years ago. So, and then we have Enoch, which is Noah's great-grandfather at 60,000, and then at 50,000 BC, we have Noah. So Enoch is the seventh patriarch in line from Adam, and Noah is the 10th, because he's 3 generations from his great-grandfather, so he's the 10th generation. But then, there's leaving big gaps, and it's not clear. Like the Bible, it is not. The timelines in the Bible are not realistic, right? So it has like the Great Flood at inside of 5,000 BC, like 2,000 or 3,000 BC, and Noah and all that, but it's just not consistent with the information. We know from the story now and from science that the biblical flood was 13 to 11,000 BC in that area. Okay, so we have a gap of about 50,000 years from 50,000 BC to the flood. Well, 50,000 roughly, and to me that's so. During that, so there's two big timelines. There's the that can be separated by the flood. So there's the pre-flood times and the post-flood times. So the pre-flood civilizations, humans were primarily servants and laborers. They were granted kingship to certain lineages, like Noah. But the key was that they were supervised and then not controlled but guided. They remained almost entirely in the hands of the Anunnaki. They lived in quote unquote God-run colonies. There was no independent human writing or complex mathematics or self-governance. Civilization wasn't quite there yet. They were more. We were more observant and serving rather than being proactive and stuff. But then there's also, I believe in that gap of 50,000. So what was happening too is those humans that were created, like Adam that was created, the Adapa that was created 250,000 BC, well, he started procreating. So by the time we get to 50,000 BC, there's probably a heck of a lot of humans on the planet, as well as Anunnaki, who keep coming in. And at one point, also, the Anunnaki were interbreeding with the human, with the women, the human women. So that was creating more and more people. I believe that that's around the time of Atlantis too. So Atlantis apparently is a civilization that thrived for almost 50,000 years apparently. So that would fit right here in this pre-flood, because by the time the flood came around 11,000 BC, well, if they had not already extinguished themselves, they were they were ended by the flood. So that fits nicely there in the lineage, in the timeline. So also at this time, there's also the readings from the Book of Enoch, which are very interesting, and they talk about watchers. So there's this concept of watchers coming down to Earth, and so it's not clear. So there's the biblical version of it, and there's the Sitchin version. But so in Sitchin's world, the watchers, he interprets it as because it has the word. They're known as fallen angels, but Sitchin interprets it as the Annunaki, that they came from another planet, whereas the biblical is more literal angels that fell from the sky. But at the end of the day, the watchers could also be the Gigi. They were the workers on Mars, and they also at one point they rebelled because they were tired of just being out there on their own. So, but there's the Book of Enoch talks about the watchers coming down to Earth, and they were not supposed to interfere with humanity at that time, but about 200 of them came to Earth, and they took human women as wives and started procreating, and that breeding created what they call Nephilim. So the Nephilim were giants. Some of them were giants, and that's so like some of the stories in the Bible, Goliath and Solomon, and but even more like disturbing. So some of these, the way they describe some of the Nephilim in the Book of Enoch, not only were they giants, but they had ravaging appetite, and they'd eat everything around. Even at one point, they started turning it onto humans. So they were eating humans apparently, and breeding everywhere, and so it became chaos, violence, wars between factions. So at one point, and that's when God or the gods decided that, okay, this is not sustainable. We need a reset. We have to get rid of all of this humanity gone wrong, and that's when they said, okay, we're going to let them perish in the flood. So they knew. So we're coming to 13,000 BC. They knew the flood was coming because they knew Nibiru was going to come on the inner side, on the inside of Mars this time, and they decided to let humanity perish, except for Enki. Said, well, look, can I pick Noah and his family to survive the flood? So here we have that's where the Noah story kicks in, because the Anunnaki had lost control of humanity and its monsters and the Nephilim, and God knows what else. And they saw this and took this as an opportunity to get the hell out of Dodge. And the plan was to come back and start again on a clean slate after the flood. But as we know, a grace was extended to Noah or Upnatishim, and the rest is history. So we have the Great Flood. Upnapishtim or Noah would have survived with his family and some animal species. So this is the pre-flood was a long period of 300,000 years of human activity, human Anunnaki activity on the earth. It's just mind-blowing that all of this may have been going on, including Atlantis, maybe a whole continent of the Anunnaki. One theory is that the Atlanteans were one lineage of Anunnaki, like a sister colony of the ones that were in the Mesopotamia, and who knows, but obviously they were advanced and had resources that were not known at the time. So the post-flood transition is more of it's kind of like the Anunnaki. It gave them I don't know. They were more sympathetic to humanity in general, and I think there's a number of factors that we'll explore there that made them more prone to give us guidance and try to make us fully independent. So after the flood, you see the Anunnaki. They introduced agriculture to humans. They gave us teachings, mathematical. Okay, hold on. I want to see philosophy, etc. I'm just going to lower this. Okay. So there we go. That's better. Okay, so the Anunnaki. They looked more at the humans as partners and proxies, and it was almost like a deliberate handover. They provided the blueprints for a fully functional, self-sustaining society. So the humans were given the 12 arts of civilization, which included, writing, advanced math, high-scale agriculture, a code of laws to govern themselves without a god. And that's another thing too. Like when you think about in Jesus' time, the Jewish people, they already had, even before Christianity was manufactured, they already had all these old ancient laws that they adhered to. The Sabbath, you can't do this on that day, or man shall not do this or that. And basically all these came from the post-flood Anunnaki teachings and the code of laws that were handed down. So so then they started. So apparently after the flood, the Giza spaceport in the Sinai Peninsula and the Great Pyramids were built. The Earth was divided in 3 regions among the sons of Enlil and Enki. So we have Lower Mesopotamia, which became Sumeria. We have the Nile Valley, which became Egypt, and the Indus Valley. Yeah, that's probably towards India. So then 9,000 to 4,000 BC. It's just, the sons of Enlil and Enki. There was a constant rivalries. They're fighting amongst each other. They call them the Pyramid Wars. And then we get to the one dating of when the Sumeria was founded, or in 3800 BC, 3800, the Anunnaki restart civilization in Sumer, cities like Eridu and Nippur. 3100 BC, Egypt is officially established in the Nile Valley. 2900 BC, Indus Valley. So one argument is that Sitchin says that after the flood, the Anunnaki realized that the population on Earth was much smaller, obviously, and because when you think about it, before the flood, humanity had like 200,000-300,000 years to proliferate, reproduce, become monsters, interbreed. It must have been a terrible mess. So imagine after the flood, the slate is wiped clean, and then we're talking, 10,000 years, not 100,000 years. So yes, humanity was more manageable, and so I think that's for some reason. I think they could foresee a time too then when they would not need to be here or not want to be here. So they were empowering humanity to be self-sufficient. So giving them the tools, the knowledge, etc., to eventually be able to depart. I think they learned their lesson. Pre-flood, they learned their lesson that it just wasn't a good idea for them to stay in the mix. It just created probably more problems than anything. So I think post-flood, they wanted to reestablish humanity, get us on its feet, and then for some reason they wanted to take a back seat and disappear. So another interesting thing too that happened post-flood is the lifespans of the patriarchs of humans started going down. Pre-flood, they were living almost 1,000 years. I did a little thing here. Okay, it's known as the lifespan cliff. So pre-flood, Adam, Methuselah, Noah, they're living like 900 something years. And post-flood, they start to go down to 400 years, and then Abraham is apparently 175, Moses 120, David 70, but there seems to be, it went down to about 100 years of a lifespan. And there's the theory that Enlil kind of engineered that somehow, possibly another genetic manipulation to so you can imagine when humans were reproducing for 200,000 years, and if they were living for 1,000 years at a time, it's just so less humans with a smaller lifespan, again, easier to manage, less chances that they're going to ravage the earth too quickly. And now this is my interpretation is that there looks to be a correlation. It could also be explained by their diet and nutrition. So pre-flood, they were basically fruitarians. Okay, in Genesis 1:29, and God said, "Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat." So certainly vegetarian. And then further on, Genesis 3:18, again pre-flood. Now it's almost like they're the gods, but when they say the God, we know it's the in the Bible it's the Elohim. It's a plural for the gods, and that always made sense to me. Anyway, okay. So in Genesis 3:18. Thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. So fruits and then vegetables and rice and grains and all that. So, and at that time they were living 1,000 years lifespan. Coincidence? I don't know. And then post-flood, and then in Genesis 9:3, that's when they're given the okay to eat animals. It says, "Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you, and as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything." So now it's free for all, and I picked this up. I don't know, take it or leave it, but there's just all of a sudden Abraham 175, Moses 120. They're more omnivore diet. Again, coincidence perhaps. And then it keeps going down. Like it reaches a low, the lifespans in the Middle Ages, but all through the 1000 to 1400 AD, with all the, they take an example of all the kings, King George, King Henry, King William. They were living like 30 to 55 years old, and then as we come to the 1800s, the lifespan with the improvement of living conditions and everything, it rises up back to the 120. But it's interesting, there's a quote too about the 120. Oh yeah, okay, let me see that. Yes, Suzanne, that's a good one. And I'm coming to that. Hold on, I'm going to search. There is, interestingly enough, the Sitchin talks about in 2024 BC, there was a nuclear catastrophe. The cities Sodom and Gomorrah, were annihilated. So basically, the Anunnaki family feud to prevent Marduk, with one of the sons, from capturing the spaceports. Humans were collateral damage. So yes, there's been evidence that there was a nuclear bomb. There's radioactivity in that area, the Anunnaki did not intend to destroy their own civilization in Sumer. So that's interesting too. They were targeting another area. I think forget where, but after the bombs went off in the Sinai and the Dead Sea area, the wind changed direction, and then the radioactive cloud, the evil wind, drifted over Sumeria, killing the very people who were loyal to the gods who dropped the bombs. Anyway, so that's kind of take it with a grain of salt, but there is a bit of scientific evidence and historical fact. It's always fascinating. And then that's another I don't know, like kick in the pants. And then the Anunnaki realize, okay, well, not only are we not profiting from being here anymore, we're causing damage to our own child, or our own chosen human race. So I think it looks like they start to, so in 2000 BC, so obviously the gods fled in their flying craft to escape the radioactive clouds because they could. So most Anunnaki start leaving the Earth around 2000 BC, and then by around 600 BC, the last of the Anunnaki leave the Earth. At that time, most of the knowledge is hidden, and we have formation of mystery schools in Egypt and Mesopotamia, done by high priests, and like Christopher talks about, there's the Dendera temple of Hathor. So the mystery schools fit in that as well. That's when the last place, when all the libraries had been burned, and the only place where the knowledge was kept was in those mystery schools, and then at 0 BC we have Jesus and the beginning of the manufactured Christian package, and the modern civilization. So when you think about it, our last 2,000 years is nothing. It's just a drop in the bucket of if you go back to 300,000 BC with all those stories. So now and then, if you look at the Nibiru, the planet that comes in our solar system every 3,600 years, it is naturally due to be back in 2900. So we will not likely see it, but it may be. We may see the Anunnaki if they decide, for whatever reason, if they're still around, they're still interested, and they want to come back. We could start seeing them as early as 2090 to 2300. That's because the planet Nibiru gets close enough for their ships to hop skip from there, which would be pretty cool. Okay, there's something I wanted to talk about too. The post-flood. Annunaki. Okay, I think we covered a big chunk. So we had the pre-flood, the post-flood, and you know that what's interesting to me is that every story or mythology in the Bible or outside of the Bible, you know, David and Goliath and the Epic of Gilgamesh and all those stories of giants and monsters and stuff. We have that. It's not just it's in our subconscious for a reason. It's in our mythologies for a reason. Like we didn't just make that up, you know. And it's to me now, like when I read the Bible, not that I read the Bible, but when I do happen to fall on a version of King James edition, I'm always fascinated because when I read it, I take it literally, because then I see, I transpose it and I see it. I have the reference in the Sitchin framework of work, his body of knowledge. Anything you read in the Bible, I'm not talking about the New Testament and you know post Jesus, but the ancient and the Book of Genesis. It's just fascinating because like. Yeah, when they talk about giants and this or that, well, to me, it's just it's a historical fact now. And anyway, so let's see here. All right, I'm gonna unmute there. Any thoughts on the matter? Did we learn anything new?
A few things. Yeah. I read the 12th Planet in the 80s, Guy, and I found it really amazing.
Which one?
The 12th Planet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it really resonated with me in terms of, I guess back in my teens, late teens, I had some really interesting travels that gave me a lot of information about them, about the gold mining, and just things about beings that couldn't procreate, and then visions about stuff that go even way back before the time you're talking about, like in terms of when they first came, like they were, like there being a ship that pushed. I think that Sitchin called it Tiamat, the planet Tiamat,
the
watery world, and that there was, like, even it would be millions of years ago, there was a body that collided with Tiamat, which was a watery world, and that's what became the asteroid belt. But in its collision, it was pushed towards what was Earth back then, and that's where we got our water, because in that collision, like you can see in Earth on the Pacific side, it's like something was completely gouged out, but that the water that we have came from Tiamat. Is that something that you remember from Sitchin?
Yeah. We basically, it gouged, it took a big chunk out of the Earth, and a lot of the water came from there, and that I think the moon was a remaining moon from that big body, and then it hatched on. It started gravitating around the Earth and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, but it seems to be in our psyche. It seems to be in our psyche because like there's some interesting things I'm just aware of with regards to that, and that that they had ships too that travel, and the beings that piloted those ships, and there were times when they developed what do you call that? Like in Star Trek, where they go very fast. But prior to that, they had ships, and they basically genetically altered people in order to, to do those journeys, because you're talking about hundreds of years of travel. What they call Genesis ships, So there's a lot.
Before they had warp speed, you mean?
Yeah. They'd travel.
Yeah. And there's even evidence, like in our solar system, like the so I forget the specifics, but there's some planets that have a reverse spin. Some are tilted, and it can all be explained by when Nibiru comes too close, it just messes up the other bodies around it, right, including our Earth. It's still, to me, it's still surprising that, well, yes and no, that, the science, astronomy have not yet detected or choose not to. I mean, how often the scientific world, everything is closed-minded and don't rock the boat. Even anthropology, they just want to believe what they believe, and even if you bring new facts, it's hard to move the position. Anyway, to me, it's just well, we'll see. I mean, we should start to be able to see something if it's coming back, and we're looking for it.
I thought it was already there. Have they not detected this body out there that that they can't explain what it is? Because isn't it
Planet X?
Hasn't it been 3,000 years or 2,600 years since they were last here?
20 days. No, well, it's been. They would have left 500 BC, according to. So then, so it's been 2,600. Yeah, so they're due back in 2,900.
Oh, okay. I thought they were there already.
But that, who knows? It's just it's hard to get good information.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get AI to go through the body of work, but who knows what it tells you sometimes. And
there was a lady back in when I was living in Vernon. She was we were out for lunch, and she's part of there's a metaphysical group back then, and it was really bizarre because I was talking precisely about the Annunaki to her, and about that long ago collision. And you know what she said to me, Dee? She said, "Oh, I was at a party last night, and they were talking about that particular collision, and she said every single person at the party remembered it in their psyche, in their subconscious. They were aware of it, like they were on that ship."
Oh,
so how's that for collective?
That's what you call having a good memory.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, it's not sure to say always happens to me, but that was interesting. Yeah. So So this is a whole group of people that remembered it. Yeah. And we just happened to be talking about it the day after the lunchtime.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it just this week I was thinking about this talk, and then it kind of, like, I hadn't thought about the Atlantis piece of the puzzle, but then I realized this week, oh yeah, that fits nicely in that 50,000 year gap before the flood, right? And it, again, it just, everything makes sense. Everything makes sense when you understand that theory or that story, and you look at all the events on that, from that, use that as a reference, then all of a sudden everything makes sense. Like it's just like, another limitation is, like, like modern science thinks the flood was 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, and it puzzles them that the Sphinx has the erosion wear from 10,000 years or more BC, and it just does not compute, right? And they're just not able to expand the knowledge, and or so afraid to go out there, Anyway, but I got no reputation to protect, so I can lay it down.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging in. It was a lot of stuff to get through, and it was hard. I was trying to go at it step by step, but there's so many things I wanted to throw in there. I hope it came through fairly, how should I say, orderly, or in a sensical way.
Yes. This is Linda. I also read The 12th Planet. I don't know, maybe 20 years ago or something, book of Enki. And I thought the same thing. It's like, the Bible is just a little part of this whole big story, and it just fits right in there. It makes total sense.
Yeah.
So, during Atlantis, it was the Annunaki were on the Earth, and the hybrid humans, and the monster types. All of that was here.
Well, they would have to have been. I mean, the Anunnaki were here before that, and there's no talk of them having, left. Or maybe they left for a period and came back, and then they realized, the people have turned into monsters. Who knows? Of course, they were always going back and forth, but I think they always had a foothold here. But what I'm starting to see is the Atlanteans were Anunnaki.
Okay.
Were somehow a lineage of that, a branch of that. Maybe the inbreeding is crazy. Like, there's all these passages of they saw the daughters of men, and they wanted them, and so there's
right.
constantly stories of the gods, procreating with the women, and the watchers, and all that. Yeah, it's just crazy.
Right.
One piece that I know, Guy, is about, like, in the original collision, it brought down, like, that original ship. It was en route. It was called a Genesis ship, so it had seeds of life in it. And when it collided, like the seeds of life, it was en route to a much bigger planet. So those seeds of life were genetically, that's why you ended up in the beginning with giants. You had giant beings, and you had giant trees, because you had trees that were miles high, right? And that's what created the problem with the giants initially, and where you get that now.
Say that again. It was because there was seeds on the ship.
Because it was a Genesis ship, and it was en route to a planet that was much larger than Earth.
Oh.
And
okay.
so it was redirected from its original where it was attempting to go to this planet. So that collision, that meant that all that was on that ship, in terms of the seeds of life that collided with Tiamat, or some people call it terra firma, all that life basically in the water came to Earth. So that's where you get the genetic aberration of giantism, because where else would it have come from?
Yeah, I mean, there's giants and then there's giants. Like if the Anunnaki were 12 to 14 feet tall, and I could
they're
see
taller. They're taller than that. They were 25 feet tall. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were really tall.
That's what I'm saying. So the Anunnaki breeding with the humans might have created like a Goliath type of giant, maybe 16 feet. But yeah, there's evidence. There's talk of way bigger, like 30, 40 feet, crazy, dangerously large.
Well, yeah, and then the trees were like 10 miles high, and then you see some of them that they cut, they cut down. You see evidence of that, of trees that are now like glass and rock. So it's pretty wild. Yeah.
I saw one. Michael Tillinger apparently was talking about 1 mile high human beings, which is just not unfathomable.
Wow.
Anyway.
Yeah.
We'll stick to giants. That's another thing. Yeah, there's evidence of giant bones, but they always disappear, right? In some museum and in.
The Y files and all that stuff. Yeah, it's interesting,
And children, children always have this fear of monsters and things like that, and then the adults say, "Oh, there's no such thing," but maybe they have that in their psyche. They have that ancient memory when they're little, until they get told it's not true.
Yeah, that's because when you think about it, we probably carry the same genetic memory from all those times, and we're the same species, right? And apparently, like some of those monsters that were wiped out by the flood, well, they may not have come back in the physical, but some say they came back as demons or on the astral, or who knows, And,
the giants in the astral. I know on Gabriel Island there's one shaman that came to do some ceremonies, and as we're driving around Gabriel Island, she says, "Oh, there's giants there, She said they're about 25 feet tall, but they're in the astral. So yeah. And the same with Cortez Island. There was giants on there, but in the astral. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting too, because this talk I'm doing tonight, I was supposed to do some version of it about 20 years ago. When we had a teacher teacher training with Christopher down in Virginia Beach back
Yeah.
in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And one of her homework coming back from that weekend was to organize. That was before, you know, podcasts and all that. So it was like organize a book club. So I was all ready. I'd set up flyers at the Ottawa Public Library on a Friday night to do. I was going to do a book club on, you know, the 12th Planet or Zecharia Sitchin, and but no one showed up.
Oh gosh.
So this is my comeback.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's fun. That's too fun. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
They just
But,
weren't ready.
Yeah.
No, people were not ready for that. They're a little more ready now, but even now, I don't know. Yeah, it's fun. We're a bit before our time, weren't we?
Just
Way
a
before our
little.
time. Yeah, just a little. Oh, no. Yeah. Okay. That's fun.
All right.
Okay,
Well,
thank you.
Thanks for hanging in and being there.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Oh, it was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah,
I love it.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay. Night. Bye-bye.
Okay, good night.